right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole? Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is Sunday, October 7th, 2012. I have a jam-packed broadcast for you today. I'm going to be going over a number of different things. One thing, I'm going to play some audio for you later in the broadcast. I actually need one of the longer segments to do it because I'm going to have to give most of the segment up to the audio, but it will blow your mind. It is from the Mujahideen in Iraq back from 2005. This is 7 years ago. And I titled somebody sent me the video, and I titled it, when I had it, I titled it, Just Who Were We Fighting in Iraq? And when you listen to what these guys, well, it's the one guy, what he says in his video, in their little, it's one of their, propaganda videos, just like we have propaganda. And they were, I guess it was supposed to be, released on YouTube or the internet and gotten across to the American public. But obviously, all that stuff was being censored. If you remember, they used to say, terrorists supporting Al-Qaeda websites and all this other stuff that were getting taken down. And a lot of it was just stuff putting out videos like this. And in the video, they do show, I've seen the video before. I have the audio that I'm going to play for you. But in the video that I've seen, the guys are, they show them, which you might actually hear some of the noises in the background while the audio is playing, but you'll hear the guy, or you see the guys planting roadside bombs and stuff. Now, they make mention in the video about foreign fighters and how not all the Iraqis that were fighting were foreign fighters and blah, 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 which is true. Now, it is true that there were foreign fighters in Iraq. We can't say there weren't. There was. I've talked about when they went into Fallujah, Operation Phantom Fury in 2004. They were dealing with Chechens. Same thing that, by the way, you can go check out Ryan Brooks and listen to him. He was on my broadcast the other night with me. It's already up in the archives. Go check it out. I think it was from the 3rd of October, if I remember. And Ryan's talked about how that when he was in Afghanistan, they knew that they were fighting Chechens and stuff there, too. So, interesting. But I want to play that audio for you. It's about 9.5 minutes, and I've talked about it on air before, so I had to go find it because I actually didn't know where the audio was. I had to go through about 4 hard drives, and I located it earlier today. So I'm going to play that for you guys later, and I have a few other things I want to go over, just the craziness, because tomorrow I have something special planned for you guys, as well as Friday, and Wednesday, Stephanie Sledge who's a writer, and she's got her own website. She's coming on. She's written a few good articles, especially about Jared Loughner and a few other things. So she's going to be coming on. We're going to be going over that stuff. And tomorrow I got something special planned. So today is me going off on a few things day. And I know most of you enjoy when I start going off on rants. So let's get into it. First and foremost, I don't know if any of you guys have heard, but Turkey has been attacking Syria now for the 5th straight day. So what was it, Wednesday, I guess, when I was on air? And I had made mention that they were Turkey was attacking Syria in response to a quote-unquote shelling. They were supposedly mortared. And I don't even know if it was more than one mortar, to be honest with you. It probably was just, even if it was only one mortar, Turkey's response has been artillery fire for 5 days, hitting certain targets within Syria. And they're pretty deep within Syria, too. It's not like they're hitting things 5 or 10 feet within the border. They're literally shelling pretty far deep into Syrian territory. Now, everybody says, oh, well, they were just defending themselves. This is what the UN, I should say. Oh, they were defending themselves, Turkey, and that Syria has taken blame for it, and blah, 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 blah. But that's not true, actually. From Turkey, or Syrian, one of the public figure, whatever the frig you want to call them, government officials of Syria came out and said on, of course, Syrian TV, which you won't see broadcast here, that in fact, that was a lie. I'm going to be playing a little bit of audio about that for you. Just the world is going crazy, ladies and gentlemen. The world is going crazy. And I did say, and I'm not trying to be the tip of the spear or anything, and I predicted this or I predicted that. But I did say that I thought, in my own estimation, and my just a quick looking at it when they first started shelling the other night, that it was probably BS, and it was probably done by rebels inside to then provoke Turkey into responding, and that's the foot in the door, the proverbial foot in the door, the camel's nose underneath the tent, because they're NATO. Remember, Turkey is a NATO country, and what's NATO's little motto? An attack on one NATO country is an attack on all NATO countries. So they get one of their rebel groups to lob a mortar over into Turkish territory, kill some innocent Turkish person, even if they aimed it at a military base. Doesn't matter. I'm sure that Turkish military person wasn't walking around going, I hope I get shelled. 72 virgins. It's not like most Americans would think. It just like you walking around in your base and you'd get hit by indiscriminate fire. It's the same way. It's the same exact way. They would just use them. Anyway, this mortar was fired, and who knows? All I heard was that it was one mortar. I haven't heard multiple mortars. It could have been multiple mortars. Maybe they fired 2 or 3. But even if it was one, as I said the other day, what does Syria stand to gain from attacking Turkey, especially at this point? The Syrian forces are bogged down fighting a civil war against Western-backed terrorists, Libyans. By the way, I played the audio the other day. I talked about this. 95% of the fighters in Syria, 95% of these fighters, this report that came out, aren't even Syrian. So it's not like it's the Syrian people. Some of them are, but it's mainly Libyans and all these other outside factions, quote-unquote Al-Qaeda, the go-to list when you need to overthrow someone's government. That's what Al-Qaeda is. And it's these guys that are causing the problems. I mean, they're destroying Syrian sites. They're destroying stuff that's, belongs to the Syrian people. They're literally blowing up ancient historical Syrian sites and looting things, blowing things up, burning stuff to the ground, destroying it any way, shape, or form they can. That would be like the Americans if we had a civil war here in America, right? And we wanted to, we had the same thing, if you want to look at it that way. And they said, there's no foreign backing or nothing. It's just pissed off Americans. But these quote unquote American rebels were going around and setting fire to the Smithsonian Museum or pissing on the Constitution, although that's not, I don't think that's even the real one that's in that case. The real one's probably locked up somewhere in a vault. But breaking into the Smithsonian and, stealing jewels or, destroying stuff, setting things on fire, bombing it, blowing. Americans wouldn't do that kind of stuff either. We wouldn't go burn our own national treasures down. So why would Syrians do it? Doesn't make any sense. But foreign fighters who don't give a shit, look what the U.S. military did in Iraq. Need I say any more? When you're in someone else's country, it's like having a rental car. You don't care. Think about it. Syria gains nothing from attacking Turkey. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you go check out the website, OrionTalkRadio.com, OrionTalkRadio.com. Our IT team, Tim, and one of his helpers, Joe Cowboy, who I gave a big shout out to the other day. The two of them had been working diligently. Joe built the new pop-up player that we have. If you go check it out, it looks awesome. And I'm going to go over this thing really quick before I get into everything else really quick, because I want to make sure everybody understands how the new player works, because the two of them added a whole bunch of neat things to it. So check it out really quick. If you go to the front page of OrionTalkRadio.com, right? And you look up at the upper left, you'll see there's two ways to listen. You have the OTR player that's embedded right there, and then right below it says Listen Live Orion Pop-Up Player. Click on the Orion Pop-Up Player. Bam, the pop-up player opens in a separate window. You got volume control. You got option of two streams. It says Shoutcast Stream or Orion Stream. The Orion Stream is the stream that used to feed the old Flash player on the website. The Shoutcast Stream is the stream that you would hear through the Shoutcast player. Just like the OTR player on the front of the site. That's the Shoutcast stream. But in the pop-up, it's all put in one easy, convenient spot for you to pick from either of the two streams. So if there's an issue with one stream, there's always a backup, so you can still hear your favorite hosts here at Orion. Now, if you look down really quick, you'll see that it says Next, What's On, and then What Was Just On. If you click on any of the banners, it brings you to the corresponding website for that host. And if you look on Who's On Now, it tells you how much time is left in the broadcast. It tells you the name of the show and the host. And if you want to go to Orion, say you happen to navigate away from OrionTalkRadio.com, and that's why we built the pop-up player to begin with, so that you could still surf and listen to us. But say you happen to navigate away from it. Well, you don't have to go open another tab and go back to Orion. You can just click on the Orion banner at the top, right above the volume control and the streams. You click right in the banner, bam, brings you right back to Orion. So it's a very interactive player. It like the links, like I said, if you clicked on my banner right now, for instance, it would bring you to my chat page. Joe's, it would do the same thing. So, and the other hosts, depending on, it'll either bring you to their chat page, and if they don't have a chat page, it'll just bring you to their website. So make sure you check it out. And don't forget to give that comment line a call, 888-272-4434. 888-272-4434. Call in, tell us what you think about the new player, tell us what you think about the site, and how the IT guys, Tim and Joe Cowboy, have been updating things. Tim's been really working his butt off behind the scenes. So if you guys want to give us or more aptly give Tim a shout out and a thank you, if you want to bitch about the New World Order, you want to go off on something, you want to talk about the police state, you want to say, hey, I like a certain host, whatever. Call in and leave your comment. We might use it on air and play it for everyone to hear. 888-272-4434. Okay, I want to get into it. I want to get into the news and everything else that I was talking about. And I'm going to play a little bit of audio for you guys really quick. Yes, it's Paul Joseph Watson from over at InfoWars, but I want to play this for you because it's a little snippet I cut out where he's talking about what I was just talking about with Turkey blaming Syria and for this mortar attack, and then which led to 5 days straight so far of attacks. And if this keeps up, then technically they're at war with each other, and Turkey's a NATO ally, which means NATO is going to come in to back Turkey, and then that's boots on the ground in Syria. There you go. Whether or not anybody wants it, they'll just do it. They did it in Libya. They don't. It doesn't matter. They do what they want. They do not care. So, anyway, I want to play this. Paul wrote an article about this, and I want to play a little bit of audio from it really quick so you guys can hear what he has to say about it.
about Syria taking responsibility for attack. This is Infowars.com. Turkey lied to the United Nations when it claimed that Syria had apologized and taken responsibility for the mortar attack, which led to a de facto declaration of war, increasing the likelihood that the shelling was actually carried out by Turkish-backed FSA rebels. So basically, as you know, what happened is a mortar shell landed in Turkey a couple of days ago, killed 5 people in a residential area. Turkey instantly blamed Syria, had their parliament rubber stamp military attacks inside Syria, and then told the UN that Syria had apologized and accepted responsibility for the incident, which of course led to the UN, Hillary Clinton, etc., roundly condemning Syria, increasing the pressure on Assad. And the international media ran with this Syria admits responsibility hoax and is still running with it, despite the fact that Syria's UN representative, Bashar al-Jafri, came out publicly and said Syria did not apologize and did not accept responsibility for.
That's the guy I was talking about. I said it was one of these Syrian officials. I couldn't remember his title.
The attack. And you can watch the video of him saying that in this article. So it appears as if this hoax of Syria admitting that they were behind the attack, when no such thing happened, is really starting to become part of the official narrative behind this series of events. And it served to kind of dampen down the growing evidence, which was reported on by German news station ZDF, that it was actually the Turkish-backed FSA rebels that were responsible for the initial mortar attack.
Now, didn't I say that's more likely of a scenario than the Syrian military shelling Turkey? Because, again, if you look at it from a military standpoint, it wouldn't make any sense. It's like if you look at the standard history version of Hitler attacking Russia while he was at war with Europe and the United States. Why would he attack Russia? It makes no sense. It doesn't make military sense. Hitler was a madman. No, it's because it was a preemptive strike because he knew Russia was going to attack him. But see, you won't learn that in regular history, ladies and gentlemen. You just learn that Hitler was a madman. I'm not saying that he was sane either, but again, certain things just don't make sense. In this case, it does not make sense for Syria to be attacking Turkey. Not at all.
Which has only benefited them, in fact, because it's justified Turkey's aggressive response in opening up this 10-kilometer corridor of bombing and strafing, which has created a path for those very rebels to go back and forth between Syria and Turkey, which, of course, is where most of them are based. And, I mean, you've got to love Turkey green-lighting these military strikes inside Syria and then claiming they're not at war with Syria because they've been attacking them for the past 3 days, as I said, 10 kilometers deep inside Syria. You know, they've killed numerous Syrian army soldiers. For months, they've been recruiting, sheltering, training, arming, funding these militants to carry out terrorist attacks inside Syria. They've done all this, but still claim we're not at war with Syria. So it looks like the Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan is taking a leaf out of the Mars attacks book of diplomacy. You know, don't run, we're your friends, while they're attacking and strafing inside Syria, while simultaneously declaring we're not at war with anyone. So even though Erdogan basically went straight to Washington after this mortar incident, begged the Obama administration to impose a U.S. Air Force-led no-fly zone over Syria, which of course is a euphemism for bombardment and bloodshed, as we saw with Libya. Again, Turkey's not at war with Syria. Just believe that Orwellian hoax, which the international media has, because they've regurgitated the hoax that Turkey had accepted, that Syria had accepted responsibility. Completely not true. They never did any such thing. And so, you know, it would be like if you walked up to somebody on the street, told them you hated their guts, punched them in the face, and then smiled and said, I don't want to fight with you. That's seemingly the role that Turkey has taken in this Mars attack style diplomacy. And of course, in doing so, they're being completely backed by the UN, by NATO, by Hillary Clinton, by all of them. So it's the next stage in ratcheting up the pressure on Syria as this Brookings Institution plan for neocon regime change moves ever closer.
Yep. Boots on the ground, that's getting the camel's nose underneath the tent. Anybody that knows what I'm talking about when I say that knows that once a camel gets his nose under the tent, if you don't stomp on its nose, you ain't getting its nose back out from underneath the tent. And same thing with NATO. If you don't stomp on NATO's foot now and take their foot out the door, they're going to march right into Syria. We're going to break. We'll be right back.
Turkish artillery has returned fire at Syria for a fifth day. It was in response to a mortar landing inside the same Turkish village where 5 civilians were killed by a Syria-based strike on Wednesday. There are, at this point, no reports of casualties. Turkey's parliament authorized a military response this week, and the Prime Minister warned it will not shy away from war if provoked. The Syrian fire zone on the border is said to be under rebel control, arousing suspicion that the shelling could be a deliberate effort to bring intervention. We'll be crossing live to our Middle East correspondent Paula Slier for details in the very near future here on RT. For now, though, with Turkey saying it's ready for a strong action, anti-war activist Ken Stone says it is Ankara that could be actually undermining its own stability by getting tough with its neighbor.
Prime Minister Erdogan may think he's very clever in lobbing artillery shells over the border into Syria, but what he may actually be doing is shooting himself in the foot. Taking military action opens the Pandora's box of Kurdish demands for a separate state. The Kurds say to themselves, or certain Kurdish parties say to themselves, if the Turkish government can act in Syria to change the boundaries on the borders in the Middle East, we too can demand the changing of the borders in Syria to include a Kurdish state. So this is the kind of blowback that Mr. Erdogan gets when he involves himself in illegal military action across international borders.
All right, let's delve deeper into this now with RT's Paula Slier standing by for us, of course, our Middle Eastern correspondent here, and we can certainly get the latest on this breaking news. Paula, good to see you. When it comes to the latest shelling here, a mortar goes into Turkey from Syria. Turkey responds again the fifth day. What do we know about the latest bout here?
Well, the latest information we have is that for the fifth straight day, Turkey has fired artillery into Syria. Now, this came just minutes after a mortar fired from Syria landed inside Turkish territory. The information at this stage is rather sketchy. We do understand that the mortar landed in the same Turkish village where mortar landed back on Wednesday, killing 5 people. At that stage, the mortar landed in a residential building. It killed 2 women and 3 children who were preparing for the evening meal. Now, the situation along the border has been volatile since Wednesday. There has been a number of mortars who've been fired across the border. Turkey has responded consistently. The latest information from the Turkish Prime Minister is that he will go to war if provoked. And certainly here in the region, there are growing concerns that this border situation might escalate into a regional conflict. The information we have is that the shell landed about some 200 meters inside Turkish territory. No injuries at this stage that we are aware of, and that it was just a matter of minutes before Turkey responded with at least 6 mortars that had fired across into Syrian territory. Now, Moscow has been involved in the situation in providing a sort of mediating role. They have urged for calm on both sides, and at the same time they have said that any kind of cross-border operations are completely unacceptable, and this is something that is being echoed by the international community. The United Nations is involved. NATO too has the potential of getting involved, and here too there's growing concern that Turkey will call for a NATO operation. And the concern here is that this could ultimately set the footprints for foreign intervention, which is something that many in the international community and certainly many on the ground are very cautious of.
All right, Artie's Paula Slier there with the latest on this.
Now, NATO was formed to protect Europe. Why is it in the Middle East? Well, because Popeye, Turkey's a member of NATO now, and we must protect our NATO allies. An attack on one NATO country is an attack on all NATO countries. Well, isn't that convenient? Considering the people that are playing the chess game understand this, considering they understand the rules, so all they have to do is rig the game in their favor. Look, they want to invade Syria. They have a hard-on for it. Remember Wesley Clark talked about this? He said there was 6 or 7 countries or something. I think it was 7 countries that he talked about that he said that they wanted to invade. and that they planned on invading, that they were pretty much going to invade. He had seen, he had talked to one of his old army buddies or something, if I remember correctly, and it was after 9/11, and he said, "Oh my God, it's more than that. It's 7 countries that they want to invade, and one of them it was Syria, Iran, Iraq, and I think one of them was it Venezuela down by Chavez? There was a bunch of them, and look what happened. They tried staging the coup with they tried staging the coup down in Venezuela. They've attacked Iraq. They've just decimated Iraq from what it was. Syria, look what they've done to Libya. Look what they want to do to Iran, and it kills me because people are like, yeah. We should go in there and bomb the hell out of Iran. Those back-asswards Middle Eastern people, they don't know nothing, blah, blah. They don't live in tents. It's not like the Taliban. It's not like you're fighting an Afghan farmer. Iranian people are much different. First of all, they're not Middle Eastern. They're Persian. That's for one. Just because they're Muslim, they're not Arabs. That's one. 2, the Iranians are not as ill-equipped as the Iraqi military was, due to the sanctions and the 10 years of bombings that they had to endure before we invaded the second time. They'd already been through one battle with us, and then sanctions and bombing. So they weren't. The resistance was more formidable, but the military themselves, wasn't that? They weren't really a formidable foe. Don't think that it would go the same way with Iran. Don't even fool yourself into thinking it would go the same way with Iran. They have sunburst weapons. If they wanted to, they could vaporize half the Fifth Fleet out there in the middle of the Persian Gulf. They'd make it vaporize and whoop. You don't think so? Please. Let's not be morons. Let's not be fools. Okay? Let's not try to fool ourselves into thinking that no. We could kick their asses, Popeye. We're the American military. I have my 4x4. It says Army Strong on the back. They've kicked the shit out of our military. Not the people that we fought. I mean, they put up a good fight. I'm talking about the controllers. Look at the people that are coming back. And they don't care. They'll just take some fresh-faced 18-year-old kid and pump him into the meat grinder. They do not care. Do you think they care about you, me, or anybody else? No, they don't. They do not care. And they won't take care of them when they come out as veterans. I can tell you that for damn sure. Here's Wesley Clark. Check this out. This is when he was talking about the plans for the Middle East.
After 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me. And one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Very nice. Did you hear the two specific names that I mentioned earlier? Syria and Iran. What do you see in the news today? Warmongering John McCain, warmongering Lindsey Graham, warmongering Lieberman. We need to back the Syrian rebels, as if we're not doing it already. And then they chastise, I love how they chastise Iran. You people are saying, Iran, you're so bad. You're supporting Assad. Yeah, the actual government, the person that runs the country, right, and that the Syrians want in power, as opposed to the West, who backs the scumbag Al-Qaeda rebels that are killing people. All right, so I've talked about this clip on many different broadcasts, and I talked about it earlier, and I want to play it for you. And, of course, the little information card that I wrote down about it, of course, I can't find it. Oh, well, I wrote down a little info about it, but I can remember most of it. The clip is the one I told you about earlier from the Iraqi Mujahideen, and this goes back to 2005. This is from one of their propaganda videos. And that doesn't mean that you have to understand what the term propaganda means. The United States military uses propaganda, the government uses propaganda, other governments use propaganda. But it was I believe their intent was to at least have the American people see and hear what they had to say. And I'm not justifying in any way, shape, or form, by the way, troops being killed by roadside bombs or anything like that. But I think you need to hear what the people we were fighting in Iraq, at least some of them, have to say. Because at least the audio from this video that I have, the audio that I have here, I'm going to play for you, is pretty telling. Wait till you hear, just listen to what he has to say, and tell me again if maybe we weren't at least getting the full story of what was going on and who we were fighting.
People of America, we wish to share with you our thoughts on the events we experienced, as well as what the future may bear. And despite the madness we have endured and still, we see no harm in presenting you with the criminal nature of your newly re-elected emperor. Despite our belief that the elections were flawed, we know now that when there is a close tie between the candidates, there is something wrong. Some in our ranks believe that any candidate from any side of the spectrum are two faces of the same coin. You, the people, have said your word in what is claimed to be a democracy, and thus have chosen a leader who claims to represent your vision. It is your right to lead the world, as it is the right of any nation which chooses to do so. Yet this does not allow you to conquer others. There is a belief of a large number of our people that a lot of the facts do not reach you, facts that may be classified as unsuitable for the general public, facts that are twisted to gain a positive image here or there. Nothing new to an emperor who represents deception, lies, crimes, half-victories, and total defeats. Your administration, time after time, lied and presented you with achievements directed by Hollywood and performed in Iraq. You have elected these criminals, and thus you are responsible for their actions. We hope that your future decisions will be based on reason and belief, for your emperor tomorrow will mirror the image of America to the world, and by his actions will your empire be measured. And for the first time in history, a mafia of the weapons plants represented by Bush, oil companies represented by Dick Cheney, and the Zionists represented by Paul Wolfowitz and Richard Pearl hijacked the United States of America in an ingenious plan to control the world. This type of administration is exactly what Benjamin Franklin once warned of. By weakness and ignorance, you have allowed this gang of criminals to hijack your country, create a new phobia to recruit those whom they regard as nothing but fuel and vehicles to their master plan. This administration will enforce on you, just as it tries to enforce on our people, new laws that will result in a police state similar to those of your consecutive governments back in our region. Legislation will soon be drafted by the appointed puppets to allow foreign ownership of land and structure, and soon our people will be the foreigners on the land of their forefathers. This new world order will enslave people of all religions and race, and soon your children, as well as ours, if they survive, will truly live in a planet of apes. And with a reduced population for ease of control, this can only be the implementation of a plan once presented by Henry Kissinger. This world has not yet seen an empire which constitutes in its prime objectives the destruction and genocide of whole populations and societies, only to control the energy resources of this planet. Your representatives and their media have portrayed an image that an insurgency is in effect, and that it is led by elements of foreign fighters entering from Syria and neighboring countries. Yet we assure you This is only a continuation of what Bush once claimed, mission accomplished. This resistance movement was prepared for and is only the second chapter of this war, and we are mostly, if not all Iraqis, proud Iraqis, who kept their oaths to defend people and country. And because this war may last longer than what the invaders anticipated, we have all promised to make their stay long, costly, and painful. Blaming other countries is nothing but creating new pretexts to invade other sovereign states and back future expeditions. They have made our country a battlefield to settle accounts with elements of Al-Qaeda, formerly dear allies and partners. They have also created new phobias to justify their continued presence, despite their loss of this war. And for the general media, we call on them to think about what they declare and not fear death and imprisonment. Do not fall into the traps prepared by those who pull the strings from Tel Aviv. As for the declared casualties, this is an epic on its own. We assure you that the figures are far higher than they declare. It is not a secret today in Iraq what we call the green card soldiers. Young men from South America and other parts of the world gathered and promised the US citizenship and large sums of cash for their mercenary services in Iraq. They are always on the front lines, and their casualty figures are never declared. They are hidden in unmarked graves and dumped into rivers under the cover of moonless nights, some of which the resistance have provided evidence of. There are also a large number of security contractors who are not listed as military personnel. To us, it is one thing to be tricked into this war, but it is totally different to come here and fight someone else's war. After the failed American elections in Iraq, they will now play the sectarian card. They are already sending their mercenaries to destroy churches and mosques alike in order to prepare the ground for civil war. They will train more and more local traitors to conduct police operations and detention raids on anyone who does not accept democracy, performed at the muzzle of a barrel. The local mercenaries will also act as sandbags to their masters when we choose to strike. The non-conduct of your troops has also taken its toll on our people. It has created resentment and disgust. They dismiss these war crimes as isolated cases, yet the figures are always on the rise. What's more are scandals of Abu Ghraib, poker, and the use of chemical weapons on Fallujah, and only God knows what's to come. Life under dictatorship is far more safer than behind the bars of your democracy. Have you not asked yourselves, where are the weapons of mass destruction? And where are the links between our previous government and the once CIA-sponsored Al-Qaeda? Or is that all now a thing of the past? What happened to the thousands of people who died and continue to die of cancer? Women who give birth to deformed babies, caused by the effect of your military's depleted uranium shells. Since 1990, thousands on both sides of the conflict have suffered unknown illnesses. Many have died since then, and others lack medical attention. Large parts of Iraq will be radioactive for millions of years to come. If we were to return this radiating material to the US and Britain, we would be no different than those who use them. May we ask you, why do you think the British government decided to set foot only in the areas of the south, where the resistance is still partially active? They have left the difficult areas for your boys to suffer. This deal was accepted by your government only to form a purely cosmetic alliance with a nation that still strives for the glory of its imperial past. They have turned the land of the free into a camp of capitalist slavery, and then changed the home of the brave into a printing house for papers they call dollars, and guarded it with enormous military might. This administration, which claims that you have re-elected, has brought on more humiliation and insults to each and every one of you than any other government in your short yet tremendous history. And as odd as it may seem, we advise you to take matters in your own hands and rid this world of such criminals, or any form of government which resembles the neocons in their aims. Form a third party if need be. Appoint those who resist preemptive war as true representatives of the people before it is too late. And if demonstrations and protests are not heard, use and protect what is left of your constitution and correct matters by force. This world awaits your move. Today these words may seem strange, but we believe that a nation which once gave the world John F. Kennedy, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, Hughes, and Henry Ford, will not fall short of giving true leaders of substance and dignity. This war has taught us that one man on the field can change the outcome of a day. One man who believes in true freedom can do what nations put together dare think of. We share these thoughts with great honesty to those of you who spent days and nights trying to prevent this war, timeless efforts to prevent this real Holocaust. To all of you we say, thank you for your time.
Just who the hell were we fighting in Iraq? What kind of insurgent, and I'm doing air quotes, what kind of evil insurgent group ends their video with a thank you to the anti-war crowd who tried to stop the mass genocide that they knew what was going to come? Even if you weren't part of the anti-war group, you were just an awake human being and said, no, enough is enough. Just who the hell were we fighting in Iraq? And I know there was foreign fighters and stuff, and there were some shady things going on. I've covered that. But the quote-unquote ungrateful Iraqi people, they seem a little more knowledgeable than most of the people on the ground doing the fighting for us. Or the people here back home. We're going to break. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. It is October 7th, 2012. This is the Sunday edition. I am your host, Popeye, from federaljack.com. Go check my website out. And I'm going to shift gears a little bit away from Syria and Iran. I want to cover Afghanistan really quick, and then I want to get into the false flag hack attacks. And I want to bring back to the airwaves Mr. Winston Smith. And no, Winston is not live with us, but I put together, he's been on multiple times, and what I did the other day was I put together his warnings about the false flag hack attacks that were going to be coming, dating as far back as January 20th of this year, and from, I think it was May 6th, if I remember correctly, of this year as well, he came on the broadcast. So I took I cut out the 2 warnings, and I put them back to back so you can hear what he has to say, and especially it being October, you listen to what he said 5 months ago and what he said 10 months ago, and look what's happened since, and you will see that everything he said has happened, or that was going to happen, or was going to happen, has happened. And now, I spoke to him the other day, and he's on the phone, off air, and he confirmed again that they are pushing forward. They're attacking Iran with cyber attacks and other things. You saw the day he told me this, it was, I believe it was either Thursday or Friday, he told me this, and then if you went and looked in the news on, I think it's called Hacker News, hackernews.com, if I remember correctly, is the name of the website. But if you go look at it, you'll see that there was, or just Google Iran, massive cyber attack on Iran, and within the past few days, and you'll see that there was this huge cyber attack. The day he called me, he told me that they were doing it while he was talking to me. Now, he obviously he wasn't standing in the room, he wasn't part of it, but open source intel. That's why he hit me up, and he was like, "You need to know about this." So I went back, knowing what I know now, and he couldn't talk. I'm going to be getting him on soon to talk live about it. But I wanted everybody to hear what he had to say without me, yammering on. So what I did was I cut out both warnings and put them together, and I'm going to play the audio for everybody so you can hear what he said about false flag hack attacks, who's going to get blamed, and what's going on, and then you'll be able to pit that against what you know now, being that he did this again in January and in May, and it'll blow your mind when you hear it. But before we get into that, I want to touch on Afghanistan really quick. Everybody thinks, the Afghan war, it's so just. Well, we're going on the 12th year of the Afghan war, and I thought since we're heading towards the 12th year of the Afghan war, I would play this little audio clip really quick. And Leon Panetta has balls. He actually lashed out at Karzai for not giving NATO credit, not, thanking the American troops and the NATO troops for being in this country. Thank you, invading, occupying force, for doing nothing but bringing death and more problems to this country. I mean, let's be honest. Karzai and the rest of his family, they're connected with all these drug-dealing warlords. They would have made it into some sort of power to begin with. And they are, obviously NATO is causing more problems for him. I wonder what it's going to be like when we leave. And I don't want to hear, Karzai's effed without the Americans. Okay, maybe the form of government that we've backed up and put up there, yeah. But I don't think maybe they'll kill him. Who knows? Check this out.
The U.S. Defense Chief Leon Panetta has called on the Afghan president to thank American troops rather than criticize them. He was responding to Hamid Karzai's complaints this Thursday that Washington is failing to go after militants based in neighboring Pakistan. That's all on the eve of the 11th anniversary since NATO forces invaded the country. For more on that, I'm now joined by an anti-war activist and journalist, Mr. Don DeBar. Good to see you there. Now, 11 years of war, the deaths of more than 2,000 American soldiers in the conflict.
But let's be honest, it's more like moving on 12 years because you have the 11-year anniversary, but then now this is the 11th year going towards its 12th year. So more like 11, we just hit the 11-year anniversary, but I like to remind people that, A, the plans for this were sitting in a drawer waiting to happen, so obviously it wasn't just Bush, he was just the puppet. But this thing it's more than 11 years. I hate to say I don't like that because it's longer than that. That's why I always use 12. I always jump ahead. Some people don't like that. Too bad. It's the way it is.
Isn't Panetta right? I mean, what do you think?
Well, first, how many dead Afghanis? The United States has a blind spot to the fact that people tend to have an affinity for their national sovereignty that doesn't disappear just because their country is occupied by the United States, but rather gets more or less brought to the fore when that happens. We saw this back in Vietnam. We got reports every night about Viet Cong, which sounded almost like King Kong, a dehumanizing term, instead of referring to the National Liberation Army, which was the name of the people that were fighting the U.S. occupation of the southern part of Vietnam. The same in Afghanistan and Iraq, for example. All of the fighting that's taken place in Iraq since the U.S. occupation has been referred to as factional, sectional, whatever. In fact, there's obviously a very strong component that is a national liberation effort. And you have this manifest in Afghanistan to the point where it's now obvious that if you hand an Afghani comprador soldier a weapon and show them how to use it, they turn it on the American soldier that handed it to them. The people of Afghanistan want the United States out, and it's a natural, thing for that to occur, and the United States just doesn't see that.
Speaking about what the Afghan people want, what will happen to them in 2014 when all the troops pull out? I mean, it seems the country is still locked in chaos and violence.
Yes. In my opinion, and this is shared by many, I think, one of the goals of the U.S. imperial project is to, where they can't completely dominate a place, leave the people at each other's throats while they carry off the resources. And so there's agitation for that's put into play as the United States enters these countries. That we have seen, for example, in Iraq. We're seeing that in Libya, although not to the extent that they talk about here. There's also an indigenous liberation effort going on there. And this was stoked in Afghanistan. But I think directly to answer your question, what will happen in 2014 is the Afghanis will have an opportunity to settle their own national issues themselves without an occupying army directing the effort.
Back in July, the U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton declared Afghanistan a major ally. But now this controversy comes. What has changed since then?
I don't know exactly what's in Karzai's mind when he makes the statements that he made, which are more or less true statements. He may be actually just saying, finally, look, we have to face the truth, and starts to speak it. It may be that he's looking past 2014 and hoping to be able to continue without the army that more or less installed him on the ground there. I don't know which it is, but I think that Hillary Clinton, that was her mission accomplished moment, and she expresses the wants and desires of the elite in the United States and not necessarily reality when she makes these pronouncements.
Mr. Deba, I'm running out of time, but just quickly, tensions between the U.S. and Afghanistan have eroded in the past few months as dozens of foreign soldiers were killed in the so-called green and blue attacks. So what's forced the local troops to turn their guns against their mentors? I mean, they were training them, they were doing good.
Again, a sense of national identity, a sense of patriotism, and hostility towards an invader and occupier. It's a natural response.
We'll leave it right.
Yes, well said. It is a natural response. I've said this 100 times. If the Chinese were here, it wouldn't matter if they were training some of our guys in a new way of policing and rounding up the people. Don't you think that there would be people that would join up specifically just to kill the trainers and the troops and to inflict that kind of damage? It's also a psychological effect. Think about that. Put yourself in their shoes. We'll be right back. We are back. All right, I'm going to play the audio for you that I put together of me talking to Winston Smith, pretty much his 2 warnings about what was going to take place. And you're also in there, included in there is the audio of him and I reviewing the trailer for the new Call of Duty game that's coming out. And this was back in May. And now the game's coming out this fall within the next month or so. And the enemy is you and me. It could be anyone, because it's literally the premise of the game is, quote unquote, the bad guy hacks drones and hacks our own weapons, our own automated weapon systems, and uses them against us. One of the clips I saw, the guy says in the characters in the video game says he didn't need to get an army, he had and use his build an army and use weapons against us. He used our own weapons against us, something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing and ruining it, of course. Obviously, they made it sound much more rhythmic for the commercial, but Winston and I get into that as well. And again, this was the broadcast from January 20th, 2012 and May 6th. And it's pertinent for me to play it again for you. That's why I cut the audio up so you could hear it, because listen to what he says and listen to what the discussion that we're talking about and the warnings he gives out, and look at what's happened since.
Last 15 or so years, Hollywood's been pushing certain themes in all hacker-related films. As far back as 15 years ago in the movie Hackers from 1994, you've got that. You've got the whole premise of that movie is a white hat security researcher developed a virus that's going to sink some oil tankers as a distraction for stealing some money, and then the attack gets blamed on hackers. Then you have Die Hard 4, which is another movie based on infrastructure attacks where hackers are attacking the critical infrastructure of the city. Then you have and then you have movies like Takedown, which is the Miramax picture, which is a fictionalized account of Kevin Mitnick, the hacker from California. And that film, Kevin Mitnick hacks into a white hat security researcher, one of the good guys who worked with the government, and found a proof of concept virus that he wrote, which attacks SCADA systems and attacks industrial, nuclear plants, water lines, that type of thing. And these types of themes are prevalent throughout all these movies. And within the last several years, we've seen these actual white hat, government-funded, corporate proof of concepts tools start to come out for infrastructure attacks. On the most extreme examples are the Stuxnet virus and Dooku virus, which have already been proven to come from governments and Israeli government and U.S. government sources. And then you'll have at every hacker conference that comes out, you'll have these floods of SCADA attack tools developed by not by black hat hackers, but by white hat security professionals who work for vulnerability firms, and they're simply developed and simply interested in getting their name out there and finding the latest vulnerabilities in these SCADA systems, because that's the latest buzzword around the information security system is SCADA protection and critical infrastructure protection. But all this is leading to is there's going to be a large-scale attack on SCADA systems, which will be false flagged by the New World Order, and it will be used, and they will end up doing exactly what the films had said they were going to do, and they're going to end up blaming hackers and throwing the anonymous matter on the attack. So when a large-scale SCADA attack does happen, don't look to basement-dwelling anonymous people. Look towards white-hat security professionals and their government contracting firms who are developing it and speaking at conferences about these attacks, because they're the ones who are standing to profit from patching the vulnerabilities and implementing the solutions for it. For a long time, the critical infrastructure aspects of society, like the nuclear power plants and the dams and the sewer pipelines and all that stuff, all those things used to never be internet connected. It's considered crazy. You don't consider making that a public-facing infrastructure. But as everything starts being given IP addresses, and even now washing machines are being given IP addresses, things end up on the internet. And even if a single outside machine can get compromised that's hooked into this internal network, then it is possible to worm through and get control of it. Especially considering a lot of these SCADA systems are ridiculously simple, using programming languages and architectures from 20 years ago. And the reason is they were never meant to be internet facing, but they are now. And there's going to be an attack on them, and it's going to be backed by the government so that they can use it to continue to implement controls and restrict internet freedoms, get things like SOPA and PIPA and all sorts of other restrictive internet legislations passed under the guise of protecting society from these critical infrastructure attacks by these wily groups of hackers. People in the hacker community and the information security community in general, they should really just follow the news and follow developments on SCADA vulnerabilities that are being released and discovered, and who's the one discovering them? What are they? What's the purpose of it? A lot of it is just legitimate researchers trying to make a name off of a hot topic, make a name for themselves off finding vulns in a system that's very popular to do right now. They can make a lot of money finding vulnerabilities and then getting contracts for the companies. There's nothing wrong with that. But what is the problem is once those vulnerabilities are indexed and cataloged, the government will pick and choose which ones they want to do. Put together a black ops team to carry it out, and then blame it on a group like Anonymous.
Yeah, and then some 14 or 15-year-old kid will be the patsy.
The Bin Laden of the internet.
Yeah, and they'll make them go down in history as the bad guy when in reality it's not. It's unbelievable what's going on. 10 years ago, if you had told me this kind of stuff was going to happen, I would tell you that you were, you've watched too many. You've watched The Matrix one too many times, perhaps.
Yeah, it's the same thing like with the Lone Gunman TV show regarding 9/11. There are all sorts of Hollywood movies.
Predictive programming is what you're referring to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. They'll have topics in films and mainstream media, and mainstream film movies and TV shows about things like the Twin Towers getting blown up or planes getting hijacked and crashed into them years before 9/11. And so basically they're all they're going off these war game scenarios that have been developed, and SCADA attacks are one of the most popular war game scenarios right now for the federal government.
Those in the hacker community that hear this live broadcast later on, you pull the archive or you hear it on YouTube, guys, whatever senses you use to work and do your magic, keep an eye out on what's going on, because you guys will be what saves the day. It's going to be you people that help save the internet. Okay, so keep your eyes open. I'll give out your warning one more time just in case.
Yeah, the main warning is to keep an eye out on SCADA system vulnerability publications. Keep an eye on who's releasing them, what type of vulnerabilities there are, what type of systems there are, and just and keep an eye out for for government war game scenarios, they always advertise these types of scenarios when they're going to make them, when they're going to make a big thing of it. A lot of it goes unadvertised. And if you're working within government, keep an eye out for those red team, blue team type exercises. And eventually one of those might, one of those contractors that are being brought in might have an agreement with some darker forces to be able to marshal some stuff in. So everyone has to be on their top diligence, not really looking towards the inside, looking at the contractors and the intelligence connections of.
I'm going to pause it right there, ladies and gentlemen. We got a break coming up. Coming back in on the other side of the break, I'm just going to pick it up right where I had to pause it with Winston, so don't go anywhere.
Diligence, not really looking towards the inside, looking at the contractors and the intelligence connections of those involved in your research.
You warned about the SCADA system attacks that they would launch. When I say they, I mean this, whatever you want to call them, this elitist group that control things. They would either have contractors do it or the government itself, an agency in the government itself do it, and then they could blame Anonymous or they could blame, a foreign country, whatever. In this case, a couple months ago, it looked like they would have blamed Anonymous. Now it looks like they're aiming that, obviously, the first piece you guys heard was from January 20th. This is from the May 6th broadcast. Weapon of mass deception at Iran. And you see them talking about how, Iran could, hack our infrastructure and take down power stations and everything else. So you know better than me about infrastructure and how that's such crap. So go ahead, I'll give you the floor. Explain to the listeners how that whole thing with the attacking Iran thing is crap. And go ahead and you can gloat if you want that you called it and said that they were going to try this.
They're basically following the playbook that they've laid out that we discussed on the last couple times I was on. They're gearing up to do a false flag attack against the SCADA systems in the United States. And for new listeners, SCADA systems are the automated controllers that are in charge of things like water systems, nuclear power plants, electrical grids, the critical infrastructure. And a lot of the technology is 20, 30 years old and shouldn't be put on the internet, but a lot of it, a lot of stuff that they have been updated has been put online. Some of the attacks that are coming through that are being developed now against these old systems or to attack critical infrastructure. And the only real motivation that a hacker would want to take over these systems for is to do some kind of damage to the infrastructure. And the only people who would really benefit from that are either foreign countries that are seeking to attack, or from the government itself that's seeking to do some kind of false flag attack. And that seems to be where they're going. We using groups like Anonymous as a proxy or as a front. They're seeking to do attacks on the United States and blame it on countries like Iran. And you can see in the recent news reports that that's exactly where they're heading. They can dovetail Anonymous into the mix by saying Anonymous was assisting topple regimes during the Arab Spring and all that stuff. And those are the Anonymous' participation in the Arab Spring Revolution has been confirmed a State Department false flag operation. There are chat logs on Pastebin that reveal basically admissions of such, and that seems to be where it's heading now. And what you can start to see in mainstream news reports that the government is warning of attacks against critical infrastructure, specifically on the SCADA systems from rogue enemies such as Iran or terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda seeking to attack critical infrastructure by attacking our SCADA systems. And that basically just means they're starting to war game these scenarios and to develop attacks themselves. And then once they will pull something major, they're going to use that to pass legislation and restrict the internet even further. It seems like the one major thing they need to get these restrictive legislations passed is some kind of internet, like some kind of catalyst online that will get people behind it, just like the Project for New American Century said they need a new Pearl Harbor in order to go into the Middle East, and they engineered 9/11 in order to pass this, but they're going to need some kind of internet Pearl Harbor, and they're working on doing that with the SCADA attacks.
And it looks like they're going to try to pinpoint it on Iran so they could get a 1-2 punch. That would, knowing them, because they never do things, on just to benefit on one level. If anybody wonders why they would blame Iran, well, it's a 1-2 punch. One, they can bring in this legislation to quote unquote protect the internet, because it's always about our protection, and they can declare war on Iran.
Active war.
Yeah,
they'd be able to dub this cyber offensive as an act of war.
The Pentagon already said they would react to a cyber attack with real bombs.
That's where they're going with it, and it's becoming more and more apparent as time goes on through mainstream media press releases, because there's more and more coverage on things like scary Arab countries or scary Persian countries attacking our critical infrastructure using SCADA vulnerabilities and things like anonymous, working to either topple or prop up regimes in the area when it's all just being puppeted from the State Department.
What do you guys, the hacker community, think about all this? What's the chatter?
Among the people who know what's going on and are informed about the New World Order and the big picture, the chatter is that it's pretty much, everyone pretty much agrees that this is where they're going with it, and everyone's kind of has their eyes open for it. Kind of frame it for the listeners a little bit, and kind of give them, in like 30 seconds, tell them what it's about. This is where we get into the new Call of Duty game. Well, the new Call of Duty video game being released by Activision has a trailer that's been released onto YouTube, and the trailer stars Oliver North, as well as a couple game developers and a Special Forces major. And they're discussing the Call of Duty Black Ops 2 game that's about to be released, specifically Chapter 4 of the game, where it's called The Enemy. The chapter of that game is entitled The Enemy Has the Keys. And the trailer of the game features Oliver North discussing at length his nightmare scenario of a group of hackers being able to commandeer and take over the command and control center for drones, and being able to use the drones against American troops and civilian populations. And they say things like, if you can hack a bank, you can hack a drone. And as they're saying these things, they're showing images of Guy Fawkes masks and anonymous imagery and icons, using indicating that is where Anonymous is going to be going with their next attacks. And there's been an outcry from Anonymous against Activision, and they're getting attacks against Activision now because of the light that they're portraying them. And that's where that's going. So go ahead and play the audio of Oliver North giving the rundown. Of course, everyone knows Oliver North is the coke dealer from the Iran-Contra scandal.
You want to know what the war of the future is going to look like? I don't think the average American grasps how violent war is about to become.
The next few years are going to...
They show a rail gun.
See a wide array of technology that allows you to blow things up.
P.W. Singer, quote-unquote future war expert and author, Wired for War. He's been featured on the History Channel show about, I can't remember, I think it's called, it was That's Incredible or That's Impossible or something. It only ran for one season and they axed it, but interesting that he's in this. And it's all, I see what you mean, Winston, dramatic lighting effects and everything else. Ugh, mind control.
To kill in a way we've never seen before in history. A lot of these will sound like things out of science fiction. Things like directed energy, which is basically lasers made real.
Oh, directed energy weapons. Like scalar technology too? Oh, like HARP.
Exoskeletons. Camouflage thought of an entirely new way. They're getting smarter. The weapon itself is becoming more independent. What happens next?
There's going to come a time when this technology is going to catch up with us. I have a nightmare scenario that a hacker breaks into our system that controls satellites, UAVs, even the launch of missiles. Consider what it would be like to have friendly fire from U.S. weapons overhead.
That was complete predictive programming, by the way.
The disconnect between how fast
I'll explain that in a minute.
Technology is coming and our reaction time, the distance between those two is growing. Some of the most advanced technologies are not just going to be in the hands of the big boys anymore. What if terrorists could get their hands on this?
There is no longer a defined battle space. The enemy could be anywhere, and it could be anyone. I don't worry about a guy that wants to hijack a plane.
Wow, that was complete. I have to stop it there because it's right at the end. Wow, that was complete. Holy crap, right at the end. It could be anyone, and it flashes to that picture of... I'm going to pause it right there, ladies and gentlemen. And again, I will pick it up right back into it with Winston Smith coming up in the final segment. Do not go anywhere. Interesting how what he said was going to happen has happened. From Anonymous, they use in their videos where it's the anonymous mask and the person, whoever is wearing the mask, is wearing a hoodie. And it hesitates on that picture for a second as it says anyone and then for a couple seconds afterwards. That is complete predictive programming. And what I said about him going, imagine drones, friendly fire here inside the United States. Yeah, that's them letting you know that they are going to use this technology against us. 30,000 drones in the next 5 years in the skies. Okay? Yeah, that's awesome. What say you, Winston?
Yeah, it's another example of how they're just flaunting it in everyone's face and preparing people so that once it does go down, nobody's surprised. Because I think one of the things that we explained earlier when one of the main reasons they haven't pulled off a big SCADA attack is because the average American will be like, well, what's an anonymous? What is this? You know, they know what hackers are, but not everybody knows what anonymous is, and putting it in things like video games that everyone's kid plays, that's a way to force it into the mainstream culture even more than it is, because the mainstream media coverage hasn't been enough. So now they need to iconify things into the public consciousness, and by putting it into blockbuster video games that everyone's going to be playing and everyone's going to be buying on for Christmas gifts and giving to their kids. That's going to instill the right mindset for people, so that once they do pull the big attack, everyone was ready for it and was expecting it and will follow the leader from there on out.
Yeah, and you'll hear people say, "Oh my God, it's like a video game."
It's just like a video game, yeah. Just like 9/11 was just like a Hollywood movie.
You know, it's pretty hard for a 6'6" Arab on dialysis in a cave to pull that off by himself with his laptop and his satellite phone, but apparently he did.
Just like it's going to be pretty hard for a bunch of 14-year-old kids sitting in college dorms to do what they're alleging is going to be done with Anonymous.
Yeah, and some poor super smart kid over at MIT or something will end up taking the fall, and they'll say, "Oh, he was sympathetic to Iran," and then they'll tie it to Iran and 9/11, and the next thing you know, we'll be carpet bombing Tehran.
Yeah, and the proxy servers that hackers are bouncing out of. That's another thing.
Yeah, that'll be in Russia, so we'll have to bomb Russia over that.
Yeah. So like once, and that's a serious consideration though. People are asking like, oh, how do you stop hack attacks? You know, hackers are using proxies and so on and so forth, and bulletproof servers, and the ISPs that are protected by corrupt governments. So how do we deal with that? And the military response is, well, you find out the location of the data center and you bomb it.
Yeah, and as we all know, a lot of these proxy servers are in Russia, so that would just be another thing that they could use to start World War III right there. Yeah. Russia, we had to bomb your stuff because terrorists were, and
China as well.
Yeah, and by the way, you do realize that Russia just told NATO that they would preemptively strike their missile defense shield, because the mainstream media is constantly going to blame Anonymous as this horrible, horrific entity that goes around doing bad things. Like, I laugh when they freak out. The CIA's website was taken down. Yeah, due to a DDoS attack. the CIA's website, CIA.gov, do you really think they have national security secrets on CIA.gov? If you do, you need to stop drinking the Kool-Aid right now because it has completely affected you. 150%. There is nothing of value on CIA.gov. Okay? Nothing. It's a bigger tragedy if the E! Entertainment News Network got taken down due to a DDoS attack. And that's how useless CIA.gov is when it comes to national security issues. Same thing with FBI.gov or any. Those are just informational sites. And they play this up so that Anonymous looks like, some boogeyman, which, like Winston said, they'll just use to blame.
There's also a lot of integration with Anonymous and the U.S. State Department. It's not really officially admitted, but when there are a bunch of chat logs on Payspin from the Anonymous IRC network that discuss different informant groups like Backtrace Security and a few others and there's discussions between what appear to be FBI agents and State Department officials discussing networks of informants on Anonymous, and they're aside from those campaigns, a lot of the campaigns that they're coming out with are pretty much just fakes being put out by the provocateurs. Like they recently had Operation Global Blackout, which was supposedly going to attack the DNS servers of the internet, and that turned to be absolutely nothing.
So who's left doing all these Anonops then? You say half of that is fake, and then but I know Anonops itself that's the real board, right? The message board.
Right. But anyone can join. So like anyone can sign on to there and start a campaign up. And a lot of the most recent campaigns that have been getting a lot of press attention have been fakes. Some of the real stuff that's been going on, you have the Russian anonymous hacking groups. They're starting to target Russian government websites and Vladimir Putin. And I don't know if those are actual Russian who are members of Anonymous. The media is saying that they're Russian activists, but Russian hackers don't usually attack Russian websites. It's kind of just part of their culture that they don't do that. They usually only attack foreign websites, a lot like Chinese hackers. So it's most likely Anons who are either sympathetic towards the Russian people, or this is another State Department false flag where they're going after Russian intelligence services and branding it as Anonymous. And that sounds more like it. So that seems to be going on there.
And that happens a lot, right? Where the State Department's going, doing these false flag attacks, and it's really the State Department doing it.
Yeah, it happened all through the Arab Spring, and now if you go to Google News right now and type anonymous hacker, the top two stories are the quote unquote Russian anonymous groups targeting Russian government websites of Vladimir Putin, which on the surface looks very much like a false flag from our side, because Russian hackers do not attack Russian websites. That's why they're able to operate the way they operate, because they know it's a hands-off deal. They won't get bothered if they follow the rules. And the second link is a hacker from Anonymous is claiming to have leaked the VMware ESX hypervisor source code, which is a virtualization engine, and the source code for it was obtained off a Chinese military contractor's computer, because that's another campaign that Anonymous has been going on the last few weeks. A guy named Hardcore Charlie has been attacking Chinese military contractors and leaking all their passwords and data. And again, who benefits from attacking Chinese servers? And Anonymous is going after attacking Arab governments, Persian governments, Russian governments, and Chinese governments. This does not really sound like the Anonymous of yours. It sounds like an arm of the State Department, and that's where all their campaigns are going. Especially since the original players are all dodging indictments right now. So guess who's running the servers?
And that's probably how they got in, was through catching these guys and then exploiting them. Because if these guys are doing plea bargains, I'm sure part of the plea bargain was to open their mouth and tell them something.
Oh, yeah. that's usually, and there's an entire network of informants and snitches within the anonymous and within the hacking community, and just like there's different niches within the hacking community. You've got the people who are into wireless hacking, you've got the people who are into web application hacking, you've got the people who are into hardware hacking, you've got the people who are into snitching and social engineering, and they usually work with they're either direct FBI informants or they're third party informants. The actual FBI agency parlance form is hip pockets, where they'll have one paid informant, and that informant will have some sources that they'll relay the information to their associate from. And there's entire networks of there's entire groups of hackers and snitches that operate like that, and they're paid for it, and they go to DEF CON, they go to all the other hacker conferences, and they're all scumbags, and they have a very, very heavy presence on non-ops.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That was May of this year and January of this year. And I'm going to be getting Winston to come back on soon, but when he hit me up the other day and said, it's just like we talked about, they're doing it, and this is what's going on, and I had a brief conversation with him about it, I immediately went back to the last 2 times he was on, and I listened to the broadcasts, and my jaw hit the floor, because I remember exactly what he said, but again, it's always good to go back and listen. So I went back and I cut both of them up so you could hear the audio, and there you have it. He said they were going to attack and blame. He said, this is May, he said they were going to attack and blame China. Not only just Iran, but China. What happened within the past 2 weeks? China and Iran supposedly hacked the United States, right? They attacked us. Right? They're trying to get Anonymous's name out there to the general public so they know who it is. He said the key words. A lot of this hacking has to do with social engineering. It's time to wake up, ladies and gentlemen, because this stuff is real and it's going on. We're out of time for today. Stay tuned. Joe Joseph's coming up with the Conspiracy Chronicles. You don't want to miss it. And I'll catch you all again tomorrow night. That's right. Monday nights now as well. 10 p.m. to midnight. Till tomorrow night, I love you all. I'm out of here.